A former conman who now runs a business providing alibis for philandering clients finds himself in the middle of a complicated web of murder and lies. Outside a motel room door, a man sprays breath freshener into his mouth just before his lover lets him in. Unbeknownst to the pair, a private detective and a car in the parking lot takes their pictures through the window. Suddenly, the photographer sees another man making his way towards the same room. When he enters, Dorothy tells Ray she can explain what's happening. Her lover thinks the man's her husband, so Ray shows them the red car parked outside and tells the woman that it's a private investigator her husband hired. To defuse the situation, the man hands Dorothy a pair of sunglasses, tells her lover to walk to a nearby gas station where he can hail a cab, and says he'll take care of the photographer. 2 days later, Vic apologizes for losing track of his client the other night. However, Ray says it's the third time he's messed up in the last 3 months, so the boss hands the employee his severance pay and fires him. In his office, the man meets Lola, a woman applying to be his assistant. To conduct the interview, Ray takes her out to lunch at a restaurant. Suddenly, Putty, an acquaintance from his conman days, interrupts the meal. The man asks about Ray's former partner, Jack McCadden, whom he's heard is back in the country. Ray says he hasn't heard from Jack in years, so Putty informs him that his former partner has a $5 million bounty on his head. Before he leaves, the man hands Ray his business card. After Putty leaves, Ray asks Lola to describe the man using only the brief interaction. She says he's probably a high school graduate who now works as a book salesman or missionary, but who also has ties to a criminal enterprise. Meanwhile, in a different part of the restaurant, Putty tells his boss, the Mormon, that he heard Jack McCadden stole $15 million from the Sultan of Qatar. He adds that the elusive man took Ray's profit cut and ran away, implying that the former partners aren't on good terms. Adele, the Mormon's wife, remarks that she finds Ray handsome. Concurrently, the former conman receives an urgent phone call regarding a client. Then, he tells Lola that she got the job and asks if she can start immediately. During the car ride, Ray explains that their risk assessment and management business is actually a front for a company that deals specifically with clients who wish to discreetly and successfully cheat on their spouses. When Lola asks if they help men cheat on their wives, he clarifies that he's an equal opportunity employer who also takes on female clients. At the Alroy Hotel, Ray receives a key card from Dorothy, and the pair fetch Robert Hatch, who's currently with his 2 mistresses, to tell him to head to the lobby immediately. At the lobby, Ray hands Lola a cheap knockoff necklace and instructs her to play along when Robert's angry wife arrives. Moments later, Judith Hatch appears and berates her husband for having an affair. She insults Lola, believing her to be the mistress, so the woman slaps the wife and explains that she's there to hand over the expensive jewelry Robert ordered for her. Elated and relieved, Judith hugs her husband while holding the knockoff necklace. After the older couple heads off with their driver Hannibal, the assistant remarks that anyone can get away with anything these days. However, Ray clarifies that they don't alibi crimes nor condone being an instrument of revenge. 10 days later, Robert drops by the office, and Ray tells him to be careful next time since his wife found the hotel matches inside his coat pocket. Then, Robert asks the man to take his son as a client because he wishes to sustain a discreet affair before his marriage. The former conman declines because he no longer does field work and says Lola can do it. However, the older man insists and promises the woman can be his handler moving forward. The next day, Ray meets with Wendell, Robert's son, and they discuss the plan for the client to head to a bed and breakfast in Santa Barbara with his lover under Ray's name, while the former conman heads to a brokers' convention in a hotel in San Francisco under Wendell's name. The client asks what'll happen if his fiancée calls, so the man assures that all calls will be redirected to him. That weekend, Wendell and his mistress Heather drive to Santa Barbara. The anxious man keeps looking at the rearview mirror, worried the woman's boyfriend might be tailing them. Then, they speak to Mr. Clump at the front desk, and the man hands over his fake credit card under Ray Elliot. Meanwhile, at the brokers' convention, Ray runs into Irv, an old acquaintance who calls him Michael, one of his aliases. The man asks about Jack's whereabouts, and the former conman says he'd also like to know where his partner is because he has a score to settle. While the couple makes love at the bed and breakfast, Ray settles in his hotel room. Later, Heather orders Wendell to strangle her while they do the deed. At first, the man seems apprehensive, worried he might hurt her, so she suggests a safe word to ease his mind. Minutes later, Ray receives a call from the panicked client telling him that he thinks he killed his girlfriend. The handler tells Wendell to call an ambulance, but the man says he can't go to jail because it'll expose Ray's business and all his clients. When Wendell begs him for help, the former conman spots Putty's card and devises a plan. So he calls the man and offers him freelance work taking care of Heather's body. Soon, Putty and his partner Bobo arrive at the bed and breakfast, where the client accidentally mentions his real name despite Ray's orders not to do so. The next day at a beachside diner, the handler asks Wendell if anyone knew he was going to Santa Barbara for the weekend. The man says his friends knew, but they didn't know who he was going with. When Ray asks if he thinks anyone's bound to look for him, the client mentions Heather's Mexican-American boyfriend, who he's certain will kill them both if he finds out what happened. He adds that the man at the front desk might also recognize his face. Then, he notes that since he was booked under Ray's name at the bed and breakfast, he technically wasn't there. Outside the diner, the handler calls a hotline to report his stolen credit card. In an indeterminate location, an imposing hitman eliminates his tied-up target. That evening, Ray drops by Lola's apartment and asks that she corroborate an alibi, putting him at her place from 7:30 p.m. until 9 a.m. The next day, the handler meets with Robert at the park to tell him what happened to his son over the weekend. The older man offers $23,000 for Ray to take care of any loose ends and make sure the police never trace anything back to Wendell. Suddenly, Robert suspects that he's being played and theorizes that if he does pay the money, Heather's gonna show up on a beach somewhere with the cash. However, Ray insists the woman's dead, and the only reason he told the father what his son did was so he could take care of the matter himself. Across the field, the hitman intently observes the two men. Later, Ray drops by the morgue to see his friend Cam, who says he thinks he has Jack McCadden's corpse. However, when the man sees the body, he's certain it isn't his former partner because the man has a snake tattoo on his face. That afternoon, Santa Barbara detective Bryce asks Ray if he's ever seen Heather before, and the man says no. The cop notes the coincidence of him losing his credit card the day before whoever supposedly stole it checked into the bed and breakfast. Then, she asks how a former conman ended up starting a consulting business and lists off the many aliases Ray went by, revealing that the police are aware of his seedy past and think he killed Jack. Before she leaves, the woman takes a Polaroid picture of the man and enters the elevator. Just as the doors close, he discreetly takes her picture using his phone, then asks an employee to download and print the photo. Minutes later, Lola wonders what the cop wanted with her boss, but he brushes it off and says he'll need her to handle some of his accounts in the next few weeks. In the basement parking lot, Putty and Bobo arrive to pick Ray up because the Mormon wishes to speak to him. In the house, Adele follows the man around, and when he politely shuts down her advances, she says she may be married to the Mormon, but he doesn't own her. She says she's from a small town in South Dakota, and even though she is currently in a big city, her life feels like a prison. Later, Ray meets with a Mormon who proposes he take him as a client, providing alibis for his hitman business. When the man declines, stating that his company doesn't alibi crimes, the Mormon reminds him that he already did, implying Putty told him about the bed and breakfast incident. Ray says it was the first and last time it had happened, so the older man threatens to rat him out to the police as an accessory to the crime if he refuses the offer. That evening at a bar, Wendell and his friends confront the former conman for telling his father about Heather. When Ray backs him down into a corner, the cowardly man offers money in exchange for not getting beat up. As the handler leaves the establishment, someone knocks him out with a pipe to the head. In an SUV, Ray regains consciousness and learns that Heather's boyfriend was Hannibal, Robert's driver. The furious man demands to know where his girlfriend is, but the former conman insists his credit card was stolen and he didn't take the woman to the bed and breakfast. Hannibal doesn't believe him, so he and his friends take the captive to an empty lot to beat him up. Eventually, Ray admits Wendell killed Heather and that they were having an affair behind the man's back. As the group turns to leave to exact their revenge, the injured man stops them and says there's a better way to take Wendell down without risking going to jail. Hannibal says whatever plan he has in mind better work, or he'll take Hatch's son out himself. Minutes later, he receives a call from the Mormon, who informs him that Robert called to hit on him that afternoon. Ray tells the older man to take the job so he at least knows Hatch isn't hiring anyone else. Then, the Mormon says if the former conman simply tells them where Jack is, they can call it even, but Ray doesn't answer. Later, the man heads to Lola's apartment where he comes clean regarding the situation he's currently in. She wonders why he doesn't ask Jack for help, then theorizes he can't because he and Jack are the same person. She adds that the theory makes sense because no one knows where he got the money to start his company, and he's never struck her as the type of person who takes orders from anyone. Bemused, Ray says it's funny that she thinks he's Jack, while the police think he killed the man and the Mormon's convinced he knows where he's hiding. The next day, the Mormon tells the handler that he needs an airtight alibi on Thursday while he's at the Elroy Hotel. Meanwhile, Lola meets with Robert and says she knows he wants her boss dead. However, she adds that the man he hired to do the job is currently working with Ray, so she suggests doing it for him instead and instructs him to bring $100,000 to the hotel tomorrow. Minutes later, the former con man sees Lola leaving the hotel. Later, police officers interrogate Wendell at the station regarding Ray's involvement with Heather's case, especially since they had an altercation at a bar. Officer Sykes asks if he's ever been to the bed and breakfast in Santa Barbara, and he says no. Suddenly, the cop takes a Polaroid picture, prompting the guilty man to panic after the officer says it's so the innkeeper has several faces to choose from when they interview him tomorrow regarding who might have been at the establishment when Heather was there. When the cops step away momentarily, Wendell rifles through the folder and sees that Mr. Clump's gonna be at the Elroy Hotel tomorrow at 6 p.m. Seconds later, the officers return and allow the man to leave. Then, Officer Sykes walks toward the one-way mirror, and it's revealed that Ray was on the other side the whole time. He thanks the cop, who's a client, and promises him a discount for doing him the favor. Later, one of Ray's employees calls the innkeeper to tell him that he won a free stay at the Elroy Hotel. Meanwhile, the Mormon sees the flowers and a note a man named Bob sent to Adele. Concurrently, the woman finds a note taped to her mirror, and she giddily smiles as she reads it. In the lingerie shop, Ray secretly speaks to Adele in the dressing room and asks if she got the gift certificate he left for her. She says yes, so he tells her to go to the hotel room he booked for them tomorrow at 6:15 p.m. In another part of the city, Wendell buys a gun. The next day, Detective Bryce receives information about something going down at the Elroy Hotel later that afternoon. Later, Hannibal informs Ray about Mr. Clump's and Wendell's respective arrivals at the hotel. Meanwhile, Robert shows Lola that he has the money she asked for, so she says they should head up to his room. Minutes later, Detective Bryce arrives and enters the same elevator Robert and Lola are in. At the front desk, Wendell pretends he's the innkeeper's grandson, so Dorothy gives him the room number. Concurrently, the officers follow the lead they received and knock on Mr. Clump's door, unaware the man was brought there under the false pretense of winning a contest. Moments later, the Mormon and his two lackeys arrive, and he receives a key card from Dorothy. In Robert's room, Lola flirts with the older man, takes the cash, and promises to take care of Ray. Meanwhile, Judith finds a package by her front door with a note from her husband telling Adele to meet him at the Elroy Hotel. In the bathroom, Lola calls Ray and says she's done her end of the plan, revealing that she was a part of it the whole time. In the hallway, a bellhop bumps into the hitman. Thinking Lola wants to sleep with him, Robert suggests they bathe in the tub together. To buy herself some time, the woman says she needs to grab some ice for the champagne. At the lobby, Adele receives a key card from Dorothy after she says she's there to see Bob. Minutes later, Dorothy calls Lola to inform her that Adele's on her way to the 12th floor, so the woman heads to the elevator, makes sure Putty's in the hallway where he can see inside the carriage, pushes the button to open the doors, and compliments Adele's shoes so the lackey hears his boss's wife's voice. Meanwhile, when Ray enters a room, the hitman's already there waiting for him. Concurrently, Detective Bryce thinks it's best if she takes the innkeeper somewhere else, so her partner radios for assistance. In the Mormon's room, Putty tells the boss that he saw Adele in the elevator, leading the man to believe she's there to meet with Bob. So he calls the front desk to ask if any Bobs or Roberts are checked in, and Dorothy tells him an R. Elliot's room number. After the trio leaves, Lola enters the room and dumps Robert's cash into the briefcase that contains the Mormon's payment for the hit job. In the hallway, someone wheels a service cart with a lifeless body hidden underneath. In Robert's room, the unaware Adele removes her coat and heads to the bathroom, but to her surprise, finds the unfamiliar man in the tub. Suddenly, the Mormon kicks the door open and finds his wife with Robert in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Detective Bryce takes Wendell down when he sees him wielding a gun outside Mr. Clump's room. When the innkeeper sees the man, he tells the police that he's the guy who checked in with Heather. After tormenting Robert for several minutes, believing he is his wife's lover, Putty reminds the Mormon that it's almost 6:15 p.m. Their deadline for completing the job revealed to be on Detective Bryce. He grabs his weapon and tells his men to stay behind with Adele and Robert. Concurrently, the hitman fires several shots into Ray's chest, takes a Polaroid picture, and places the photo in his journal under Jack McCadden. Minutes later, the Mormon sees the cop in the hallway and orders her to return to the room. To his surprise, a dozen police officers are waiting with their guns pointed back at him. In Ray's room, the housekeeper happens upon the dead body on the bed. By the hotel hotel entrance, Lola overhears police chatter about a certain Jack McCadden found lifeless in his room. So she hands the briefcase to Hannibal, says it's his, and runs back to the elevator. Then, the anxious woman barges into the room to see the body. Meanwhile, the police take Wendell and the Mormon into custody. To save themselves, Putty and Bobo remove their conspicuous attires and throw them in the garbage. As the officers take Lola out of the room, she cracks a bemused smile. Concurrently, a perfectly fine Ray exits through the hotel doors. In Robert's room, Judith looks down at her guilty husband, who gives her a sheepish look. At the lobby, Dorothy hands Adele an envelope with cash and a new identity compliments of Ray. Later, Kant tells Ray that he disapproved of the 15 previous bodies he showed him because he wanted a good-looking corpse to pose for himself, revealing that he and Jack McCadden are the same person. It also reveals Cam was the person wheeling the corpse through the hotel in the service card. The hitman, Sudhir, is Ray's old friend who needed a body to show the Sultan of Qatar to collect the $5 million bounty and was part of the plan the whole time. At the airport, Lola jokingly admonishes Ray for keeping a part of the plan a secret. So the man says he'd like her to be a part of his new life, not his old one. She asks where they should go, and he says she can choose. However, when she suggests several places, the man shoots them down immediately due to several pending cases his aliases currently have in those countries. Eventually, the pair share a kiss, and Ray notes how much taller Lola is compared to him.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.